All right, I wasn't sure for a second if the recording was actually working, but it is. It's on, and there's no editing on this podcast. So welcome to the show. If you're a previous listener, welcome back. If you're a new listener, welcome. Nonetheless, you're both welcome, whatever spectrum you fall on. So in this week's episode, we're going to be touching on the likes of foods and the likes of it's linked with mental health. So I got this question in from Instagram as I put up a suggestion box of topics you wanted to talk about, and we'll be going through how important food is, and then we'll be going through the likes of foods that I highly recommend you to add in and what their importance are and their role in overall optimal health, because that's what I suppose I'm a firm believer in. That really does start with the food that you eat. Okay, so because nutrition really does matter, and the whole idea of it is the increase in the population of people that have been subscribed antidepressants is increasing all the time. And what's changed, I suppose, is that's one of the first point to cause. It's the fact that a lot of people are being prescribed these due to the fact that the food that we're consuming has changed. Okay, just even go back 20 years ago, we could say 10 years ago, the likes of these medications that are what antidepressants that are given out on a regular basis are becoming much more common due to the fact of the food, as I was saying. And that's as a result of large scale production of fruits, vegetables, meats, animal products. And when you understand that something that's produced on large scale, those corners are going to be cut somewhere. And when we'll give the example of firstly meats, if you eat meats in your diet or have a high percentage of meats in your diet. And I used to typically have a completely different diet to what I do now. Okay, I come from a country background. It was lasagnas, it was chicken casseroles, it was pizzas on Friday, pepperoni, because I was a big meat guy. I was a big GA sports-based individual team sports, and that diet has completely changed now. And I just wish, and what I'm doing, I'm putting out this information for you to pick whatever type of food that benefits you most, because no two people are the same, and that's important to note. And I'm not vegan, I'm not vegetarian. I eat a high percentage of vegetables. And touching on the likes of meats produced on a large scale, okay, whether it be the likes of chicken that you get for a very, very minimal amount of cost at the counter. The whole idea of it is the value of food is not paid at the counter, it's paid well before that. Or the likes of a beef that's produced, whether it be in the country that you're currently living in, whether it be Ireland, whether it be the UK, whether it be Australia, America. I know you have listeners in all different areas of those listed countries. The fact is that you can get it grown in poorer countries and then brought into you, and then you don't gain the major advantage of that. The whole idea when people are consuming things that are fresher, are organic, are chemical free, that's the main difference I'm going to touch on here now today. So when you consume something that's non-organic, it can be heavily sprayed with the likes of, first point to call, we'll call it, and the glyphosate. Glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup. Okay, when we're looking at foods, the whole idea of anybody looking at something that's cheap is to realize how is it made for this cost that it's labeled as. So whether you get something for 49 cents in a store, we won't even mention, or $1 wherever you're located, the thing is there's somebody losing out, whether it's being heavily sprayed, which is for the most part with the likes of harsh chemicals, which I'm going to touch on glyphosate, because glyphosate is something that's a killer. It's not only killing the likes of the, we'll call it the microorganisms that it's sprayed on, whether it be the vegetables, whether it be the crop, the grain. Okay, oats are another one that's highly sprayed. I recommend you most definitely to add into your diet organically, because grains, it's something we in Ireland we eat a lot of, whether it be breads, and typically I'm focusing on brown breads. And then the next point to call is the likes of the grass, typically sprayed off. And then sometimes I've seen, personally myself, I've seen this, animals grazing on dead grass that has been sprayed with a harsh chemical. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. The thing is, for anybody to realize for a second that that's going to be beneficial to us, because when and what that animal eats is so important, because you are not only what you eat, you are what you the product or the animal or the item that they end up consuming. So if they're consuming grass that's been heavily sprayed with glyphosate or harsh chemicals, they end up ingesting that. And either their food products, whether it be the milk, whether it be the cheese, whether it be the, like I said, grain, the whole idea of it is you need to understand where food comes from, get a connection with where and what you're buying and more regular. And that's what I'm trying to get people to do. Understand foods, what it does to the body, and touching on the likes of what glyphosate is. It is an antibiotic. It actually causes the killing of microorganisms in your stomach. And that's what I'm talking about. All these different things are linked with poor health, and the gut and the brain are connected. We're touching on the likes of mental health. Okay, because 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. And how important is serotonin? Extremely, because that's what it is, the happy hormone. So if you want to be happier, you need to start eating a higher percentage of chemical-free, local, fresh, organic produce that are going to improve the likes of your gut health. Because that glyphosate is, as I said, is a carcinogenic firstly, but it's an antibiotic. Okay, it's a terrible thing, and it was invented by Monsanto. It's a company based in America that also sell it, as you might know the name, Roundup. That is sprayed on the periphery edges of your gardens, and spraying the dandelions is actually a beneficial plant. You can actually consume both the roots. The fiber found in it is typically inulin, which is another topic we'll be touching on in this episode. We might actually even expand it into a separate episode, because we might be able to provide you with as much value in the likes of 30 minutes. I typically only leave this for 30 minutes. So all those things with the antibacterial found in the Roundup is leading to symptoms such as poor gut health, leaky gut, autoimmune diseases. And those autoimmune diseases, okay, can go as far as, we call it asthma, acne, and spots. And I used to have two of those firstly. The likes of allergies such as hay fever was a big one for me. Every year I used to have literally tears balling down my eyes, big red runny nose. But that was when I typically had a highly processed diet. My foods wouldn't have been high in vitamin C, which is a natural antihistamine, and I definitely wouldn't have been having organic foods. And that's something I want people to note. And then the last thing is, with antibacterial found in high percentage in non-organic produce, is leading to the lower population of gut microorganisms. When you have lower percentage of gut microorganisms, you have the likes of a poor production of that happy hormone, the serotonin. Okay, and that's what's one of the main causes of mental illness. Okay, when you understand for a second that poor health is linked with poor gut health is linked with poor mental health. And from that, it's the foods that we're eating have a direct result in the way you look, you feel, and how much energy levels you have. And we can bring it back even more simpler again. The fact is, every vitamin and mineral is found in the likes of whole foods. And I'm a major believer in that. And if you're taking antibiotics for any particular reason, whether it be, we call it to recover from an illness or a wound. And to touch on people on YouTube, this podcast comes out on YouTube as well. I had an incident with my finger, and I lost my finger, and I was recommended to take such antibiotics. And it was something I'm more of a holistic individual for health. I went down the path of foods that could actually help and improve my overall gut health and improve my immune system and speed up the recovery from the likes of an injury. I got 11 stitches and I lost my finger. Okay, so I can clearly tell you now that, put my hand up here now, and the incident was actually just happened there behind me. It was with an axe, and it's something that I just want to show people. And for those of you that are on here, I nearly went straight in through the midsection of my palm. But what I did was I upped the likes of my foods that could speed up recovery. Okay, zinc is one of them. Okay, zinc from the likes of, not tablets, not supplements. Okay, it's from pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are massively high in zinc, and they're massively high in fiber. Fiber is good with gut health and also increases the likes of my production of those microorganisms, which also we'll be touching on every single time, produce serotonin. And when people know and understand that on a regular basis, it's important to remember that food is medicine, and the more food that you eat, the more benefits you can get from it. I didn't take any medication, only natural remedies for this exact wound, and it's healed up extremely well. I can even put a photograph up when this podcast does come out. Okay, I do have a scar, but it's very unnoticeable, as opposed to the way I thought I might have had when I had chances of having only 9 fingers. Well, maybe the thumb you wouldn't call a finger, but the whole idea of it is I really want people to know that I heal myself naturally from the likes of different things that I have done through the likes of the foods that I have consumed. And for me touching on the benefits of the likes of your improved microorganisms in your body is your immune system is also improved. Okay, we've touched on serotonin, and then also the benefits of improved microorganisms in your body is the likes of increased energy levels. How is that? Because microorganisms break down material in your body. Okay, they break down undigestible carbohydrates. These carbohydrates are something that can give us more energy. As a result of that, when you're more energy, you're much more likely to train. When you're much more likely to train, the fact is that also that is an increased production of the likes of that serotonin again. But I'm going to give the example of when you're training, you're also increasing the likes of dopamine. Dopamine is another happy hormone. And how I like the science behind this, okay? So when you're training, okay, in the foods that you have eaten throughout the day, that is something that does contain different proteins. There are 9 essential amino acids, and all the amino acids are traveling through your blood, across your body. And as a result of that, what ends up happening is there's a competition. There's a lot of competition right now in my body and your body for these amino acids to reach the brain. But one of the major precursors, the precursor means to make. So the precursor to dopamine, and that's another one of the happy hormones, is tryptophan. Tryptophan is found in all essential complete proteins and is essential in the diet. So when we train, okay, we end up tearing muscle fibers. When we tear muscle fibers, what ends up happening as a result of that is these amino acids go to, just give it for simple examples and the visual for the people who are watching on YouTube, goes to the muscle or the bicep. When you tear those muscle fibers, those nutrients, proteins will end up repairing that bicep. And then that means there's less competition because there's less of them in the bloodstream. When there's less of them in the bloodstream, an influx of the likes of that competition and influx of tryptophan gets to your brain. So that's really important. Tryptophan makes happy hormones, and that means like the likes of the foods that you eat give you more energy as a result of improved gut health. When you improve gut health, you also have increased energy levels. If you increased energy levels, you have increased production of these happy hormones, serotonin and dopamine, in 2 different ways. When you train and combine, it's a healthy lifestyle. I'm trying to get people to incorporate into their life on a regular basis, and I do like the science behind that. And also for those people that think that people who make podcasts, they don't have notes, yes, I do. Just little ballpark figures of topics in relation to what's coming up. So I'm going to take a sip of water here. So with any diet that people are currently eating, it's not that I want people to say that they're vegan or vegetarian. The whole idea of it is the more plants and fruits and vegetables you add into your diet, the better. Okay, the more processed foods, the more, we call it the Western diet of chips. And I used to eat a lot of pizza. Friday night was, or Saturday evening was typically the pizzas that I used to have from a box. Okay, you can still eat pizzas, but to make sure that you get them, you can even make them yourself. And every time when I start talking about food, my mouth starts to water. So that's a Pavlov's theory, if anybody knows about that. So the consumption of, we'll call it, all these different fruits and vegetables are going to aid in not only increased energy levels, increased production of serotonin, as we've been discussing, but what foods can actually really help with the natural production of improved gut health, which is linked with improved mood, are the likes of your prebiotics and probiotics. Okay, to touch on what these actually are, okay, these are prebiotics first. Okay, the prebiotics are the whole foods. These are the foods that feed your microorganisms. Okay, so the foods that we eat, that feed the likes of your microorganisms. So the ones that I highly recommend are onions, garlics, leeks. Okay, those are real easy ones to add into your diet. Chop them up, put them in stir fries. There's so many different benefits to those, not only in fiber. The type of fiber is inulin, and the other one is, we'll call it dandelion, would be up there. But you know, like a lot of people might say, "Come, that's very far out there." I don't mention that first, but that actually is higher than onions and garlic and leeks. So if you wanted to add those in, that'll be a major benefit. Dandelions are absolutely positively free, but just make sure you haven't yourself, your family members, or anyone in your immediate area has sprayed the likes of those dandelions. both the root, both the leaves, and I have actually on my YouTube channel how to cook it, make it up in a stir fry, bish bash bosh, couple of leaves, and you're on a winner. But another one would be Jerusalem artichoke and yacon. Another couple of vegetables I have mentioned on this podcast previously, and I grow a number of those. Remember, the dandelions are absolutely free. They're typically labeled as a weed, but the definition of a weed is a plant in the wrong place. So I'm a major believer in whole foods and getting it as best you can, chemical free. Okay, and you say, Colman, I can't, but I find it difficult to consume these type of vegetables. Add in any type of vegetables, they're going to have fiber, and these are just a list I highly recommend that are on the prebiotic list. Okay, Jerusalem artichokes is another one that I highly recommend to add into your diet. And then we're going to move on to, those are the prebiotics. Okay, now we're moving on to the probiotics. So the probiotics are the fermented foods that you can add into your diet on a regular basis. So these are the likes of, we'll call it tofu and tempeh. They're fermented. Okay, they're plant-based sources of protein. Okay, I haven't mentioned a lot about meats on this podcast just due to the fact that meats are complete protein, yet they don't have fiber. As I said, I'm not a vegan, I'm not a vegetarian. I have a quite high percentage of vegetables in my diet, and for the matter that the gold standard being organic vegetables, that's why I consume those. I'm for optimal health. I want people to, whatever their fitness goal is, either lose weight, they're improving their endurance, or build muscle, depending on which end of the spectrum you fall in under. These foods are going to benefit you nonetheless. So fermented foods, the likes of kombucha is another one. Kombucha can either be made yourself, or there are Irish companies, and there's companies all over the world, but the one that I recommended, why? Because they've previously been on the podcast and I enjoy the taste of. It's Holo. Holo is something that's an Irish product, and they're based in Cork at the minute, and I would have on a regular basis. We have the likes of yogurts, okay, sauerkraut. And sauerkraut is fermented cabbage. You have also the benefit of that coming from the brassica family. The brassica family is something that has an antioxidant called sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is one of the strongest antioxidants that is out there. Okay, it's typically found in high concentrations in microgreens, which I have touched on a separate podcast. But if you have any questions, and for people that are taking notes, I know some people take notes in these podcasts, send them to me, and I can reply back to you either on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. So next one is yogurts. Okay, I mentioned yogurts, but there are yogurts that are much better than others. Okay, the ones that don't have a high percentage of sugar, and I cannot say that without gritting my teeth, because people say, "Oh, I'm eating yogurts," but not the yogurt that have added flavors such as strawberry. If you're looking for strawberry flavor in your yogurt, add strawberries, because that's going to add fiber as well, and that's going to benefit you. And make sure when you're getting fruits that you consume them. I highly recommend you to consume the likes of fruits, especially coming into the summer months now, organically. Why? Because they are, again, one of the foods on the dirty dozen, which can again be heavily sprayed, and that's something you don't want. You want minimal amount of toxins in your body, because toxins are leading to poor gut health again, and leading to so many different illnesses in, we call it, from your skin health to your mental health to energy levels. And the whole idea of it is the more foods that you eat that are at optimal nutrition for you, and optimal nutrition isn't always what's in it. It might even be the fact of what's not in it. And that's what I kind of tell people with the likes of the foods that are organic. It's like, oh, the studies to say, Colman, that such and such doesn't contain so much vitamin C, doesn't contain higher magnesium. The thing is, that's absolutely fine. I want you to remember, when organic food or chemical free, whether you grow it your own or not, is something that's not containing it. It doesn't contain harsh chemicals. It certainly doesn't contain glyphosate. And that can be proven with the likes of the studies, the inspections that are done on organic farms. I'm registered with Organic Trust, and that's an Irish governing body that comes out for a minimum inspection of once a year. They can also come out unannounced, come to the gate, walk straight in and say, "Come on, we're taking this sample of such and such." And I'd say I can't say very much about it. They take the product and it's taken away for tests. And I suppose in combination of those prebiotics and probiotics, this is one of the things I highly recommend. If you take anything away from this show, have one meal a day of a salad type lunch. And I don't mean just eat greens. I don't mean just eat a plate of salads. That would be really beneficial in itself. But to maximize the benefits, add in fermented foods as kimchi, sauerkraut. And kimchi is actually just spiced kind of sauerkraut, and I like that. I've made my own. I actually have a link on my YouTube. I might put it in the show notes for showing people how to do that from scratch. It's unreal. I actually use the kettlebell to make it, but we won't get into that just now. the fact is that making a salad type lunch and adding in high fiber foods that have not only what prebiotics and probiotics, make this lunch exactly. Chop up the likes of onions, garlic into a pan, extra virgin olive oil. Then you have greens, whether it be spinach, kale. You can add in rainbow chard coming into season, or silver beet, it's also known in different countries. Those are your greens, and next thing you're going to add in, you're going to need a protein source. You're going to add in the likes of maybe tofu or tempeh. You could add in organic chicken, and that's actually something that's going to be coming up in my meal very, very soon. And that video has been put up on Instagram. And I tell people about this because some people say, Colman, I'm not really sure how to do that. I'll show you exactly how to do it. It takes no more than 10 minutes to make these meals. They're delicious. They're beneficial. They're all single ingredients. They're all organic. And when you do that, you're getting micronutrients, okay? And that's what the body runs off after that, okay? So then you have these micronutrients, antioxidants, vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin D. You have complete proteins, healthy fats in extra virgin olive oil. The tofu and tempeh or the chicken is your breadwinner right there. And the next point to call is then that's going to have you on increased energy levels. You're going to be happier as a result of that. You're going to be more productive. People that are more productive, they are much more ready to train. And training and optimal energy levels is the pillars of health. And when you do that on a more regular basis, it's so important. And a lot of people say, again, that kind of want to say, what's the best diet, Colman? What's the best diet for optimal energy levels? Whether it be the likes of vegan or vegetarian or Mediterranean or paleo or low carb, what all these diets have in combination together is they really do, have a high percentage of whole foods, including high quality foods. There's healthy fats in them. And for anybody that says that the low fat diet is, they recommend you, if a personal trainer ever recommends that to you, or each and anybody that says it to you, whether it be on Spotify or any of the podcast, any of the areas which are just consuming information, okay, that's negatively going to affect the likes of your brain as well. While we're touching on this topic here, mental health. Okay, why is that? Because 60, if not 70% of your brain is made up of fats. Fats are essential for the diet. You have to consume them. There actually is no essential carbohydrate, but I still add them into my diet on a regular basis at insulin sensitive times. I typically have mine first thing in the morning and after my workouts with that salad type lunch that I was just talking about right there. And fats are really important, but it's important to get the right type of fats for optimal energy levels. Where do you get them from? The recommended foods, extra virgin olive oil coming from the olives. Typically use either Greek or Italian from one source. We can touch on that in a separate podcast. So I want people to consume them from nuts and seeds, but what nuts are high in a fat that are recommended for optimal brain function? It is omega-3s. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. So either hemp seeds, which is a complete protein in itself and can be definitely sprinkled on the likes of that salad type lunch for yourself so that you can have increased blood flow. When you've increased blood flow, you have more vitamins and minerals. More vitamins and minerals going to your brain, you're able to think clearer. And as a result of that, that's for optimal energy. I'm all about energy. I'm all about the production and getting vitamins and minerals throughout your body as best you can to perform at your best. And that linked with gut health, and gut health linked with the mental health. And that's kind of the round circle of what I'm talking about here in today's podcast. So if you're mentioning the fact that, or being mentioned by anyone to consume a lower fat diet, just remember that the body needs that. There are essential fats, as omega-3, as I said. Walnuts is another good one. Flax seeds I highly recommend. It's also high in fiber linked with the gut health. Then another one is chia seeds. Chia seeds are something that contain both omega-3 and omega-6. Also getting them from fish. The thing is, with fish, some people are consuming fish that are unsustainable. Secondly, they're following fish and the seas are becoming heavily polluted with plastics and microplastics, and then the likes of the fish are eating those bits of microplastics, and then that's in us, and it's then having a negative effect on your gut. And all the time we're touching back to the gut, because the gut is and has a massive player on the likes of your immune system and the likes of your mental health. And that's what I want people to get back to. I want people to understand that get the best food that you possibly can for you. And salmon can be heavily farmed, and that's why I used to have salmon a lot in my diet and not have as much as I do anymore. Wild caught salmon, if you do eat meats, and after that then you can go far back as go back down the lower part of the food chain. Algae is something you can add into your diet, and you can also get omega-3 fish oils from supplements, but that's not what I recommend, because I much prefer to have something from a whole foods as opposed to the likes of something you take in tablet form. And it's what I want people to realize is in schools, we're not taught enough about foods. We're not taught about how to grow. We're not taught about how to cook. We're not taught about the foods at its simplest form, because every food goes into it. These three things: a complex carbohydrate, a healthy fat, or a protein. And when you understand that and take on board the information that either you have received in this podcast or previous episodes, put it into practice. Please add in more whole foods to your diet to improve your mood, and organic foods being the gold standard. Food is medicine. You must make sure that it's food that suits you, because if I was to tell you to add into your diet, such as a food you weren't able to tolerate or digest very well. Like a lot of people can't tolerate beans. Okay, I'm able to tolerate beans because I have introduced them in small amounts, and that's something that I do with people on the organic fitness program. Small incremental addition, you can build up a tolerance to that food. But if you can't tolerate that at this moment in time, and I was to tell you to add that into your diet, that wouldn't be in alignment with, we'll call it, optimal health for you specifically. So that's why work with someone and try and add in these foods if you're doing it on your own in small amounts, so that you can build up and to the idea of getting in more of these beneficial foods, getting them from local sources, getting them chemical free, getting them organic. Why? Because that's just the gold standard. Those three things, those complex carbohydrates, those healthy fats, those complete proteins in your diet on a regular basis are going to improve your health today, tomorrow, and the start, as soon as you start adding them into your diet. Okay, and I suppose what I want people to know is I'm going to finish on the likes of, whenever you're having a meal or whenever you're doing a shop, I just want you to remember just one more. Is there a chance that you could add in to your shopping list, to your shopping trolley, to your basket, another fruit, another vegetable that contains or is from local, is from an organic source, is from as fresh a source as you can possibly get it, to gain the advantage of that? And that's the same when you're sitting down or you're cooking a meal. Could you add in spinach to a curry? Could you add in, we'll call it maybe butternut squash to a meal, and take out and half the likes of your meat sources? All right, because for the most part, organic meats are extremely expensive and vegetables are a hell of a lot cheaper, but this is all linked towards you and optimal energy levels. My whole approach is for you to add in more vegetables that benefit you, that benefit your gut health, that are linked with mental health. And a lot of people say and ask me, Colman, how are you so happy? Because I do these things on a regular basis. And regular basis might even be cutting it. I do these on a daily basis. There isn't a day that I wouldn't consume foods that are organic. And I want people in the future to remember that this idea of organic foods are going to be not only the gold standard, but just the standard. It's something that's going to be in the shop as soon as you walk in. You're going to find it hard to find conventional foods, because Roundup, that poison, is exactly what it is going to be banned in the near future. And I'm working towards that. And the more people consume organic produce that benefits them, you must remember it's not only going to benefit you, it's going to benefit the future generations and the soil, which is so important as well, because that's where every vitamin and mineral and what's in the soil is then taken up by the plant. And what's taken up by the plant, we are the end consumers of. So I suppose that's 30 minutes of this episode, talking all about foods, gut health, mental health. And it's supposed to wrap it up. It's about adding in prebiotic foods, probiotic foods, whole foods, leeks, onions, garlic. There's the three easy ones: roots and artichokes, leeks, yacons, 2, check those out. Prebiotic foods, fermented foods, adding in more plant-based protein. Why? Because that contains fiber, added vitamins and minerals towards your microorganisms can feed on, increased population, more serotonin. That leads to you being happier. And when you're happier, you're healthier. And in my eyes, most people actually do want to be happier and healthier for the most part. If you fall into the category of people that don't, it's a very, very small percentage of it. But I'm sure the listeners of this podcast are extremely looking for an improvement on not only their health, but also their mental health. And that's what I'm trying to get people to do: live a happier and healthier life. I suppose if you've got any value out of this today, I'd really highly appreciate it, because I don't have ads on this podcast or on YouTube or any of my platforms. I would just really would be, if you took like 60 seconds or even 2 minutes out of your day to leave me a review on either share it on your social media, leaving a review on Apple, or just pass it on to one other person and put out this message to people. Eating local, fresh and organic produce is something that I want people to do on a more regular basis. I suppose I always finish off these podcasts by saying, stay tuned, stay classy, and keep it organic.